So I'm Tom Westley. I'm the director of the club. I've been involved for, I don't know, many, many years. 30 years I've been a member of the club. And my first entry into Concours, I believe, was about 1986. And at that time, we had a very modest turnout. The company wasn't in great shape. And I think we had, it was at Stanway House in the Cotswolds, Lord Needpath's place, which he kindly let us meet. It's a very beautiful place, but it hasn't got a great deal of space. So I think it was only about 30 or 40 cars. And that was my first engagement. But it was also the time that Mark Donoghue turned up for the first time, bless him. And so that's how we sort of cracked off with all people. And in the days when Ian Gregor was the chair, it was all a very modest affair. But sadly, Mark has stood down now from the club and the trust. But I just wanted to say, to his great credit, he was the driving force behind trying to move Aston Martin Concours to the highest possible level. And I think it's true to say, over all the decades and what went on in between, we have driven standards to a really high level, which is great. It's not just Mark was the leader, but I mean, a lot of it's to do with the enthusiasm of all the people that have been engaged in that process over the last years. And so I think this is my experience, is that Concours was probably the most social and one of the most enjoyable parts of being a member of the club. I mean, it is, I don't know how many of you are brand new to Concours, and how many, I see some faces that actually know quite a bit about Concours, but the point is that it's a very sociable thing. It's something which we all do, if you're that keen, twice a year, once in the spring and once in the autumn. And that, regardless of how well you might or mightn't do in the competition, I think the discipline of cleaning one's car at the beginning of the season and then again at the end of the season is a great discipline, and it does help to keep cars in excellent condition, provided you've got somewhere nice to store them, which I'm sure most of you have. So it was through Concours that I met and got to really enjoy so many people's company over the years, not least John and Dot Browning, who encouraged me to do different things. Sadly, John's no longer with us, but he did a fantastic job restoring Cloverleaf and presenting that. And of course, Mark Donoghue and myself ended up owning Cloverleaf for a period in between, and we can talk about some of the things around that. But I think for now, I just wanted to say welcome to everyone, and I hope you will find this interesting and informative. Very, very open to questions at any point. And my great helpmate and friend is Michael Reid, who's here too. So after my little introduction, I'm going to ask Michael if he'd be kind enough to have a look, introduce you to how it works, you know, how the bit of the science, if you like, behind how we judge and mark and how Concours works, and then we can develop from there. So thank you, Michael. I'll turn over to you, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Reid. So I've been a member for 22 years, and I've been doing Concours since 2011. And I only got into that by accident. I had a DB6 Mark II at the time, which was being renovated. And in order to give the garage a bit of a target to get the job finished for, I said, well, I'm going to enter the spring Concours at Althorp House. And duly the car was finished and it looked fantastic. I thought, well, that's good. Well, let's enter it. And to my surprise, I won the Pride of Ownership class, first time of asking, in a field of 13, which left me flabbergasted, actually. And there, this sort of passion for it came along. As Tom was saying, well, we have a scoring system, which I think Christine can put a score sheet up on the screen share there.
Bear with me, chaps.
So this is the famous marking sheet, and this is my car judged at Compton Verney about 6 years ago, I think it was. In simple terms, the Concours is all about originality and cleanliness, and every car starts off with 100 points, and effectively you get deducted for misdemeanors and crimes that the judges managed to find in your preparation, and it's split into simple 4 categories: the interior, the bodywork, the engine, and the chassis and wheels. And again, marks for originality, the condition and cleanliness, and patina and originality. And effectively, the judges will go around and inspect the cars in great detail. We tend to do 1 category at a time amongst all of the cars. And there's a certain level of, it's not an exact science, and particularly when the scoring is really tight, when the cars are a very high standard, it is about a direct comparison on the day between the half a dozen or a dozen cars that are in front of the judges at the time. And the level of deduction can be anything from a 1/4 point for just a sort of minor little thing that they might pick up to maybe a whole mark for something that's really either very badly damaged or not in great condition. And from that, you end up with a score. I think anything over sort of 75, you've got a very good car. And then it is, if you get into the late 80s and early 90s, then it's quite exceptional. But there's an awful lot of hard work to get to that point. So that's how the scoring works. And at the end of an event, all the score sheets are available. You can go and read them. You can take a photograph of them, like I've done, and you can effectively use it as an aide-memoire for next time. So if there's rusty bolts or something, well, identify them and change them. If it's a scratch, you might want to get your body shop to try and polish it out. But it's a very simple marking of how the car is presented on the day, and an effort for you to take it to the next level, should you wish. I'd probably say one of the things is things can be pointed out that you might never have noticed. Having judged the Bloxham class many times, it's amazing how many owners don't know that the seat squab comes forward to adjust the lumbar support, and the amount of rubbish and crud that's underneath that when you pull the seat forward, and they're surprised, go, well, I never knew it did that. And they've owned the car for years. And obviously judges will maybe point out safety related items that you've never noticed before. Again, judging a car at Duxford, you noticed the supercharger belt on somebody's car actually had a split in it, and that he didn't know that, and that could have been well, detrimental to his performance, to say the least. So that's how the marking works. So it's not an exact science. It is down to the judges on the day, and it is in comparison to the other cars that are with you. So you might get, say, a mark of 85 at one event, and you might get 82 at another, because the judges are either more critical, the competition's greater, but it is accurate and fair amongst the cars that are present on the day. I'm fairly certain of that. And certainly Mark Donoghue took great care in advising us as judges to be accurate as possible. And of course, at the end of the event, all the judges, you're very welcome to come and ask us, well, what did you think about this? And what do you mean by that? And we're happy to go over and actually point things out, and also show how things maybe could be done better in the future. It is very much all of us in it together. We enjoy the judging, and as competitors, we want you to end up with a better car at the end of it.
Yeah, I think there's a very good point that you made, that in that it's not how the scoring occurs is by a team of judges on the day with those cars. So it is a means to an end. It is not a completely precise number. I've had people come in and buzz and say, well, we got 94 last time and now we've only got 88. And that's not the point. The point is that the cars are judged comparably, properly, just as Michael's described. And so it is a fair process, but it's not, it is a bit arbitrary in how that team of judges work together on any particular class of cars. That's how it works. But it is fair. I can assure you that there's a lot of knowledge and competence amongst the judges. And I see John Purser's on the call. I know John's judged cars at Pebble Beach, Aston Martin. So we've got a lot of experience amongst the people, and it's great fun to dig into the detail. Yeah.
Michael, I have a question here, if I could just ask you. Somebody, Jeff Harvey has asked, is the Score Sheet Amok specific, or is that common across multiple car clubs?
No, as far as I know, it's Mark Donahue set it up, and certainly over the last few years, there have been sort of maybe once a year, maybe every other year, judges conference where we actually meet together to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the concours, and to agree what the parameters for our judging is. So the score sheet is dedicated just to the club.
Thank you.
That's exactly right. And as Mike rightly says, it has evolved over time. And of course, one of the greatest challenges is originality, which is of different parts. And that is much more challenging often with the older cars than with the newer ones. If somebody buys a brand new car or cars, less, in the last 10 years, mostly people haven't modified them in any way, and the components will tend to be original. So we introduce this patination side of life as well, as to whether things look realistic and as they should do. But these are the things that have been debated at length in our various judging meetings in the past. And I think the marking sheet now, so far as we can, is I think as good as it could be in terms of trying to consider all aspects. Yeah.
And Tom, also another question from John Rees is, how do you balance patina against originality?
That is one of the thorny questions of all time. I think patina, from my point of view, if you've got a car like Tom's DB6 Mark II, where the interior is sort of 40 or 50 years old, and it's in a wonderful, aged, but complete and lovely condition, that's wonderful patina. But a car that's scruffy and tatty, that isn't patina. That's just lack of care. So,
Sorry.
Go on, Tom.
I was going to say, I think this is one of the most challenging elements of the judging, really. And you need to have experience amongst the senior judges as to what is valid. But I would say, in general now, and this is across the whole classic car world, originality, patina, and things being preserved rather than completely remade and renewed is absolutely preferred. So there's great wisdom in going gently at these things. And I know Tom Wood's done a great job with a pre-war car just now. So between us all, I think we're getting a handle on how things should be done, in inverted commas. But of course, judging that, it can be very subjective. But I do think one of the things that's a protection in that regard is that it's not normally one judge. It is a group of us have had considerable experience, and that's very helpful. Yeah.
So another question. I think we'll have one more question before we move on and have a look at the prepping of the cars. If a DB6 has never been restored and has been under the same owner for more than 50 years, where will it be placed on the 100-point scale?
Well, it'll start off with 100 points and we'll work from that point, probably down. But if it's been well looked after and cared for and cherished in all that ownership time, then it could score as highly as a recently renovated car. I mean, one of the problems is some owners have had their, particularly the Newport Pagnell cars, restored, possibly over-restored. You know, they never left the factory so shiny, so gleaming. They probably could have been sitting in a field for 6 months before they could find anybody to buy them. So I remember Ian Barclay's DB4 is absolutely amazing. And again, I think that's either one owner or low owner, 60-year-old car, but it's fantastic inside, absolutely wonderful. Mm. So that, again, will be taken into account in judging.
Yeah, I think the point about that is that it is difficult to make a complete statement about how would that car score, because there are some people like Ian, as Michael's just said, who have maintained that car scrupulously during all his stewardship, and it's fantastic. There'll be other people who've had it all that time and probably not cleaned it terribly well. So the answer is, you can't give an answer. The car's got to be examined on the day properly, and we would look for evidence of rust and things that have not been cleaned. It's very easy to clean the top of a car, but Concours is all about, as those different areas of the car are all separately shaken out and judged. It is the whole car has been judged inside, outside. At one stage, we used to check sort of MOT style lights and everything else was absolutely functioning right. We don't bother that so much these days because the value of the cars and the status of the owners. Mostly they come to us immaculately in working condition. So it is about the cleanliness and other aspects of it, really. Yeah.
Shall we have a look at how you, some before and after pictures?
Yep.
One moment.
So here we're going to discuss a 2011 Rapide, which is owned by a friend of mine, Chris Kirkness. He's owned the car from new, and the car had lived out on the streets of London its entire life. And I said to Chris, you know, it's looking a bit scruffy. You should do a Concours with that. Rapides very rarely get entered into Concours, so it'd be quite unique. And so he signed up for that. Do you want to just show the other 2 or 3 photographs there, Christine? So things like the wheels have been curved, the paintwork was a bit scruffy where scuffs from his golf bags had whacked it, and a lack of cleaning regime. So many people, members, you'll meet them and they'll say, well, is my car good enough to enter Concours? Well, as long as it's not crashed and bashed, yes, because you can revive and bring back a car from obvious defects like this fairly easily. And you'd be astonished at how much pride you'll have in your vehicle when you've gone down this process. And I think that is one of the things that Mark Donohue's always put out there, is that by doing good quality preparation, the car really does come alive again. So on Chris's car, he actually had some work done professionally. So obviously the wheel repainting, the bodywork was actually done by a detailing company, because neither he nor I actually had the skills to do paint correction, and the interior was given a basic clean, and it came back looking fantastic. And then we spent about 2 solid days on my drive actually going through the engine bay, the interior, some of the underside, and just generally lifting the car to an entirely different level, to which Chris was just amazed. And he did enter it into the Wormsley, where he was never going to win an award, but it held its own, and he was chuffed to bits with it. And it felt like he had a brand new car at the end of it, for some hard work and a bit of dedication. And obviously I went through with him how you do the preparation, which is quite a lot. I mean, actually, this is a photograph of me on the day in Holland. We're going to come to that a bit later, actually, Christine. On some of the things I was going to suggest, go through on the basic preparation. On all modern cars, the paintwork is pretty soft, and the obvious thing is, how good does your paintwork look? But you do have to treat it really carefully. If you think that a car's covered in dirt and grime, if you then just wash it like your dad probably did, you will end up with scratches, swirl marks, and all sorts of defects in the paint. It's about keeping the contact with the paint and all the finishes as light as possible. So, I mean, some people do snow foam sprays over the car, which is very good for taking off the heavy dirt. And then it's all about really gentle cleaning, using things like the 2-bucket method, where you have a bucket of clean water with your shampoo in it, and then another bucket to wash your cleaning mitt. And just out of interest, that is a lamb's wool one, and that is a microfiber one. And these, forget sponges and chamois leathers, they need to go in the bin. They need to go nowhere near your Aston Martin, because you'll just knacker the paintwork. There are some very good guides online about how to do detailed prep. One of the well-known companies, G-Technic, they do a handy little guide here, and it really takes you on a step-by-step of how to wash your car, how to do it without damaging the finishes, and to protect it. I mean, we could talk for hours about that, which I wasn't going to do, but you need to invest in things like microfiber towels like these, which are incredibly soft. And because they're dedicated for cars, they have things like the edging on it is non-abrasive, where if you buy some cheap stuff from Tesco's, it'll probably scratch your paintwork. And again, finishing cloths one of the golden rules of those, if you ever drop them on the floor, put them to one side. They do not go near your car again because you can't get the grit out of it.
Oh.
And there are lots of products to deal with your the polishing, detailing of rubber and trim, leather. That is a whole technique, a whole topic in itself, in a way. I mean, some of the notes I've got here is, you know, you should wash your car in the shade. If you do it on a hot day, the water will simply just dry on your paintwork, and you'll be left with tiny little marks and spots all over the paintwork, which then are a nightmare to get off. And if you're living in London, one of the problems there and other parts of the Southeast is, of course, lime scale. And you'll get lime spots from the water if that's allowed to dry on the paintwork. And you can get products to take it off. But I used to use an inline filter to the hose, and that actually stripped all the minerals and the lime scale out of the water before you wash the car off. Things like that, really very helpful. What you finish your paintwork with, either wax or a ceramic coating, I think if you ask everybody, they'll all have their own opinion. I've had cars finished in both. I think from a simple maintenance point of view, wax is probably the easiest to look after yourself, whereas a ceramic coating, they're generally applied by professionals and they do require a bit more care in keeping them in great condition, but depends on how much you use the car. Do you have anything to add to that, Tom?
Yeah, well, you won't be surprised to know that I agree with everything you've said, Michael. He's a serious competitor, is Mike. We've each won the elite class at different times. So, yeah, absolutely agree with all that's said there. The only thing I would add to that really is the involvement of the individuals, the owners. I mean, we are not looking for these cars to be professionally prepared. All of you who've got a garage and some covered space can do this work yourself. And as Mike rightly has said, you'll probably do it more conscientiously and more carefully than would somebody who was paid to do it. So I'm very lucky. I've got a sort of ramp at home, so I can fiddle underneath the car as well, which helps. But I mean, basically, even without a ramp, most of this work you can do, and you can absolutely do it to a high standard. You'll get satisfaction from doing it. It's a bit of a de-stressing thing for me. I have to do it once in a while, calm myself down. But then afterwards, the other point I'd like to make is on the day, because we all have to drive, and this is in the rules, you should not trailer your car. You should drive your car from wherever you live to wherever the event is going to take place. So inevitably, you're going to have to clean it on the day. And so what I say about that is that's tough, because you're going to get a limited period from when you pitch up on the ground. And some of us who are quite who worry about ourselves sometimes will be there sort of 7:30 in the morning, so that you give yourself sufficient time, because you've got to go over the whole car properly in all the nooks and crannies. And in my humble opinion, you really need a buddy. You know, you can't bring a team of detailers. That's not the spirit of it at all. But either your wife or your son or enthusiastic relative, bring them along, and that will give you an edge, because there's quite a lot of work to do on the day, and as we all know, sometimes it can be raining and really difficult. Other times be glorious sunshine and you can enjoy it, and everything in between. But it is a process. You've got to, if you want to succeed with this, you've got to apply yourself to it, is what I would say, and that's the way it goes now.
I'd say that all the hard work, sorry, Christine, all the hard work has to be done before you do go to the event.
Yeah.
Because it is on the day. You have about an hour and a half, maybe an hour before breakfast, if you're that keen. All the competitors have to drive over the same piece of road to get from wherever they're staying to the event. And Tom and I have both been at events where the groundsman has helpfully just mown the field or driven 40 cows across it, and all the competitors arrive, cow muck and grass cuttings all over the bottom of the car, and you just tear your hair out. But if we're all in the same boat, then the decision sometime has been taken that the judges will not judge the underside of the car, because simply none of us have the time to take 4,000 grass cuttings out with wheel arches. So that's a level playing field. So yeah, the prep has to be done in advance, because what you're trying to do, as Tom was saying, on the morning is just finessing it. And that means everything out of the car. I've seen cars where there's still the Sunday Times in the footwell, there's sandwiches in the back, and they think, well, it's ready, and it's not at all.
Yeah.
The car has to be as it left the dealer in a way, except for the bunch of flowers and the champagne. And just, it needs to be clear and immaculate in every sense.
Yeah, Michael's absolutely right. And of course, the joy of this process, if you keep doing it, and I'm sad enough to keep doing it, is it is an iterative process. So a lot of what you do at home, getting down to the nitty gritty and changing bits and pieces that aren't quite right, and slowly but surely, the car just becomes better and better over time. But that's a very good point. You've got to do all the grunt really at home. It is fine, but you've also got to do the last little bit. But that is the last little bit. Most of it should have been done in advance. Yeah.
Couple of quick questions, actually, gentlemen. Somebody's asking if you have PPF or ceramic coating on a car, more modern Astons, is this detrimental to the scoring?
Well, the ceramic coating isn't, because basically the judges can't see that. It's literally nanometers thick. But PPF tape that's not factory applied, yes, you will possibly lose a mark or half a mark. But if the rest of the car is fantastic, don't worry about it. I think if you're getting up to competing for elite, that's maybe the time to worry. But really, everyone knows that is applied, and there's a very good reason for it. But don't be put off by having that done, because the rest of the car is still as it is.
I mean, it should be said, as Michael's already said, just for clarity, that the basis for our judgments are how does this compare with how the car would have left the factory when it was first registered. So, any modifications, any other things that you fiddle with, bad. It should be exactly as it would have been presented to you as a brand new car. And I've suffered from that, haven't I, Michael, with having badges on my car. I nearly shot myself at the last one, but anyway, we won't go there. But the point is that that's what you should bear in your mind, is how would this car have looked when the owner picked it up brand new, either in the 1950s, 60s, or whenever. That's what we should go back to. That's what we're trying to emulate. Is a perfect example. Yeah.
And another one on paint, actually, is somebody's asking if his DB6 retains the factory paint except for half rear left side, is it recommendable to paint the whole car?
Well, if he's got 20,000 quid available, fine, paint the whole car.
Well, can I tell a little story? Because it's an anecdote, but it's true. I went on my DB6, which is one of your prizes since. So this is 2013, I think it was, nearly 10 years ago now. I went on a trip with the Goodwood Road Racing Company, a tour of Ireland. And we were parked up on the west coast of Ireland. And on a car park was a bit of a gravelly surface to it. I say there was myself and there was other people with other type, not all Aston Martins, Ferraris and other expensive motor cars. Anyway, a massive storm came in and blew the gravel up, and literally scattered these things and chipped all across the sides of many of our cars. And it was absolutely heartrending, but true. But anyway, by the grace of God and good fortune, I was insured with Chubb, who many of you probably are, via Lockton and so on, and they were good as gold. And it pertains to this question, because that was the question: do you just paint the side that's been, hammered with those gold, or do you paint the whole thing? And after a bit of debate and negotiation, there was a slight discount, but basically they painted the whole car for me. But 2013, so here we are, 10 years later, and it still looks pretty good. So it is about preservation. But the point about it is that, yes, if you're going to really make it look proper, it's very hard to do it piecemeal as far as the paint's concerned. Having said that, I think the restoration of cars, when they're done on a rolling basis, so for example, you do the powertrain, and then you maybe do the engine bay, and then you maybe do the wheels and tires, and then you do the coach. That's the best way to restore a car. To rip it all to shreds and start all over is inviting a lot of problems. I think if you do it as a rolling restoration, that's a jolly good thing. But I think with the paintwork, that's the one area where you've probably got to do it in one hit to make it look as good as you can. Yeah.
Would you like to move on to discussing engines?
Oh yes, Michael, do you want to kick off?
Okay, Christine, you've got a couple of photographs, I think, of one of the V12 engine in the Rapide. So,
Oh, sorry.
go. So there's quite, as many you will have either in modern cars, the V12s or maybe the V8s. They're, I'd say they're a little easier to get at than the straight 6-cylinder engines and Newport Pagnell cars and the V8 cars, but access is damn difficult. You will bark your knuckles, you'll swear a bit, because you still need to be able to get down to places where the judges can see it, but you've got to be able to reach it to clean it. And it takes quite a lot of effort, in fact, probably as much effort on the engine as any other part of the car to get that to look fantastic. So there's all of the painted items, there's the rubber hoses, there's the aluminium items, which on here are quite corroded, and that's a bit of metal polish and a lot of tender loving care and quite a few hours of work. Remember Tim Butcher telling me you'll spend more time in the engine bay than anywhere else, and he's not wrong, really. I think there was another photograph as well. You can see here the I think this is the induction pipe, but that rubber, if it's deep cleaned and then it's treated with a rubber spray, they come up looking like new. And again, this is where your old toothbrush comes in handy to get a bit of metal polish onto the metal fittings and to just work it in there. You need to protect the other finishes so you're not damaging them with all the detritus that comes off from cleaning these. But it can be brought up with some effort to look absolutely fantastic again. But it is a task. And that's my car having been done. And you could eat your dinner off it. And I think one of the other things, this is Tom's car, but when you have got a car up to this sort of level of preparation, it's a lot easier to keep it this way. The hard work is taking, like my friend's Rapide, up to a good stage. But when it's at that stage, actually, it's just an incremental amount of care. And when surfaces are clean, polished and protected, they stay that way for a long, long time. So it's a lot of upfront work. And after that, it's a lot easier going.
Yeah, I agree with that, Michael. And because the thing that we're lucky these days is because more and more people indulge themselves in these things, the range of products that are available, people like Autoclim, is better than ever. And if you're careful about getting a pack of those things to bring up rubber and some other materials, which is often difficult to know how to clean them. If you use these proprietary, specially designed cleaners for certain things, it's amazing how good they are at bringing things back. I mean, you briefly showed my DB6 picture there, Christine. I don't know if we could go back to that, because I just wanted to comment on it. That not that one, no. That's it, thank you. That one of the grave dangers is over polishing, over cleaning things. Now you can see the original Weber carburetor casting there, which would have probably been just like that when it was new, and it would be a mistake to get your chrome cleaner out and rub really hard on some of those things to spoil that original patina, because they were die castings. They came out of the thing, they gave them a bit of a brush off, and then that was what they looked like. I mean, the exhaust's a different matter. Maybe that can look really scruffy if it's so. You clean that properly, and then a lot of people sort of Zerco-Tech, which is a very fine sort of zinc coating on that, which will just preserve it, and that looks good. And that was probably pretty authentic. If they were supplying a car to somebody, they would take care that it was properly done. Camshaft covers, everything else, even the plastic tubing, the whole thing really, we're not trying to over clean it, over restore it. We're trying to properly clean it so that it looks as it might have done when it was, say, when it left the factory. So that's just something to bear in mind. You can be too ambitious and put things backwards rather than forwards if you're not careful. No.
So that was the underside of the bonnet. That's just years of grime. But again, just careful cleaning with straightforward products. All that paintwork comes up looking absolutely lovely. You open the bonnet and bingo, perfect. So this is actually the underside. I think all the Gaydon cars, one way and another, have these sort of under trays. This is from the back of my DBS, and that's as I took it off and actually had hosed the muck off it. But it's a pressed aluminium sheet, but on closer inspection, it's corroded. The finish was really pretty poor. So I went over that with like an industrial Scotch-Brite pad, taking care to go with the grain of the original finish as it left the mill. And then I actually sent it off and had it anodized at a professional anodizing company that do things like shop fronts. And it came back. I think there's another photograph. There we go. And the next one. Oh, that's sorry. If you go back actually, Christine, so the underside of the car, when you take the under trays off, suddenly you find the cradles that carry your suspension are pretty filthy. Now, some of that is not visible to the Concours judges, but while they're off, it's easy enough to clean all of that down. But you can actually see that actually Aston Martin don't particularly paint these safety critical parts that well. There's already corrosion on a car that's only 5 years old, I think, at this point. And there's a point you and the garage just need to take care that you're not getting any structural issues underneath these closing panels. And if you go forward again, Christine. So this is the front under tray on a DBS, and presumably DB9 is exactly the same. So that's a big steel pressing, but that was very easy to just wash it down, clean it, put some wax on it, and the next time it took like 2 or 3 minutes to clean it again. I would also say when you're on the underside of the car, Aston Martin use some big steel screws for bolting all these things together. Go to your local dealer and buy a bag, because you'll notice some are corroded, some will have been scraped where you've ground it out on a low curb or dip in the road, and easy enough to replace those. And the front one on DB9 DBS is a glass fiber under tray. Again, take that off, clean it. I cleaned it polished it with a black wax. It comes up looking as good as new. And again, when it comes to the day, it's easy to clean when it's already clean. It literally just wipes over.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Michael. And my experience is that with the modern cars, I have no idea who Aston Martin's supplier is for their screws and nuts and bolts, but they're of very variable quality. You see some that are rusty as old iron, others look to have been properly treated. And it's an embarrassment. So you're right. The easiest thing is just to get a bag of proper new ones, clean it, and then just swap them. But a comment I would make while we're looking at the underside of your car there, is that it is much easier, if I dare say, to prepare a modern car than an older one. As soon as you get into the 50s and 60s, because most of these modern, sports cars, Aston Martin not least, aerodynamics play a huge part in how the thing performs at speed. So these enclosures are built all underneath the car. And so even if you're a judge trying to be as anal as possible, it is actually very difficult to spot much beyond if the surface has been properly done and prepared, it's quite easy to make it look really, really good. And you'd be surprised how many people fail because they just don't try hard enough in that area, because that's an area where you can make a difference, but you have to work relatively, something you've got to think about and do in advance of the day, as we've just been saying. Yeah. So when you've to get into trying to clean a car that's all open underneath, and you haven't helped you've been on a muddy lane or something, you've got a major job on to try and make that look good on the day, which doesn't apply to the modern cars. And it's the same with the engine bay, actually, because a lot of the all the modern engines are encased with different plastic coverings and things, and you can whip them off and clean them and put them back on. It is easier to do that, but of course that has a problem in that it becomes very, very difficult as judges to differentiate between these cars, because when people get good at doing this, they all can look almost equally good. You have to get down to don't you agree, Michael? Yeah.
Well, it's the level of preparation has got to such a fantastic standard, Tom. But then I think that's a credit to the owners and the enthusiasm for Concours full stop. Is that generally the level of prep is very high. There was a photograph earlier on of me cleaning, down on my hands and knees, cleaning my DBS. And I've driven that 400 miles with Mark Donoghue across France, Belgium and Holland to the Dutch Concours 2 years ago, where we'd gone out to help Tjeerd and the group out there put on their concours, and we did the judging. I helped them with the judging, and it was fascinating to see the Dutch were hugely enthusiastic about it all, and on the whole had prepared their cars to a high standard. But the devil, as ever, is in the detail. And I think I judged 3 vanquishers, all of whom had cleaned the outside of the wheel. None of them had cleaned further than the front edge of the spoke. So there was still 10 inches of wheel, filthy dirty. Oh, I didn't realize you had to do that. But they listened, they learned, and I'm sure as and when Tjeerd does another one, they'll all be spanking wheels, that's for sure. And other parts like the underside. But generally the preparation and their enthusiasm for it was of a very high standard.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're the beneficiaries of many years or so of practicing this, both the judges and the owners. So we have upped our game significantly, and we should spread the word. I suppose on the positive side, if you get a car that succeeds well in AMOC's Concours arrangement, you can be sure that it'd be very welcome at Hampton Court and Salon Privé and other places, because they recognise the cars that have won the class and won an elite within AMOC are extraordinarily good cars. So this is all very helpful now.
Shall we have some of the finished products?
Yep, okay. So, right, so that's Tom's engine bay, and I judged this car at the last Concours, and it really was done to a really wonderful standard, Tom.
Thank you.
But there is hours of preparation in that to get a complicated engine like the DB straight 6 engine looking that good, and the engine bay and all the ancillary bits and pieces. And one of the things I would say, when I first got a Gaydon car, which was a AMV8, I was astonished at sort of the step change in the quality of the engineering and the manufacturing that had gone into the modern cars from the earlier Newport Pagnell cars, which are so much more handcrafted in every sense and not necessarily using the latest engineering techniques. And the modern cars are certainly simpler to look at and to get at things, or to there are far fewer nooks and crannies, which if you look in Tom's engine bay there are literally dozens of places for dirt and grime to be in, and so many tricky places to get in to actually deal with it, as I'm sure you will attest to, Tom. Yeah,
indeed, yeah. But as I said before, you can't. Rome wasn't built in a day. If you want to get really keen, and you've just got to keep on keeping on at it, and bit by bit, provided you keep the car in good, got a nice dehumidified ideally, but a garage where you're not going to get some damp conditions and bugs all over the place. It is easier than you might imagine to keep it in a good state once you've put that graft in the first place. Yeah.
Oh, and this was Charles Porter's car at Baconic House in Cornwall for Concours. He and I were both entered in elite. It rained, I think, every single day over the weekend that we were all down there. Yeah. And I think I washed and prepared my car 3 times. Charles did exactly the same. And I've sent this lovely photograph of it in the hotel car park, wrapped in film. And he beat me by half a point. So there you go. I think plastic was the winning half point, but all credit to him for that.
Still rankles though, doesn't it, Michael? Never mind. Oh, you got me on the screen now. This was the Kensington Palace lineup of Astons 2013. To celebrate 100 years, we had the lineup of 100, well, just over 100 Aston Martins in Kensington Palace Gardens there. And that was, I said earlier about when this division got damaged by the gravel being kicked up. That was when it was fresh out of repaint. So we in fact, the paint, one of the issues was the paint was still a bit soft had to go very gently with it. But that's more or less my starting point. So 10 years later, you know, if you look after these things, it still looks remarkably good. You know, you only need to paint something once and paint it properly, and then do the proper, you know, looking after it. And this is taking different places. This was is it Wormsley? This was taken.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would comment there again with the DB6 and the DB5s, with your headlamp glasses, which are shrouded in the glass, and that, if it's going to look absolutely right, you've got to take that chrome surround off and clean the inside. Because I'm sadly, when Aston Martin built these cars in the 60s, they weren't expecting them to be kept forever, probably, and the sealing around where the glass lens sits in front of the headlamp and the chrome, they never sealed properly. So if you drive the car in the rain, you can be sure that you're going to get stains and things like that. And it's quite a lot of work to take bits off, to do it properly, clean them properly. So when it's put back together, it just looks immaculate. And that's the sort of detail you've got to get into if you're going to win at the highest level these days. Oh, that's my son starring. When we this was a class win, I think, at was it Houghton? Was it guys in Lancashire? Houghton Tower. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But no, it's if you get into it, I find it, and I'm sure you will find it, very rewarding and very enjoyable. And it's a great way, in my experience, to I say meet lots of like-minded people who like the cars as well as we all do, and an opportunity to indulge yourself in keeping. And of course, you're doing a fantastic job in preservation automatically. It's another shot of my car. Was that Anik? I can't remember where that was. Looks
like Anik Castle.
Probably Anik, I think, yeah. So, and that's another point which I would like to make, is that a lot of people think all Concours cars are garage queens. No, absolutely not. I mean, I know Michael has driven his car all over the place, and likewise with my cars. I think the DB6 goes to Goodwood, you know, 2 or 3 times per annum, which is a 3-hour drive from home. It's been up to Scotland, all over Wales. I mean, we absolutely use the cars. There's Michael's look in the
This is in the Italian Dolomites, out of a 5,500 mile drive around Europe, and we were rather surprised, having arrived in the valley of Cortina in the sunshine, drove up into the mountains into a snowstorm, and this photograph was taken by somebody at a restaurant and posted on the internet. But it was yeah, tricky drive. Wide tyres and snow don't go together too well.
Did you just want to go back to I think you've briefly showed that's it, the Cloverleaf, because Cloverleaf was a fantastic achievement by John Browning, not by myself. Mark Donoghue and myself, in fact, bought the car from John when he, not long after, when he'd done the restoration and won his class, and thought there was nothing more for him to do with it. So we had many pleasurable experiences with this car. We took it from London to Edinburgh. It's been a Shelsley Walsh Hill. It did win the RAC trophy, which was all credit to John's preparation. But the point about that car was it was everything in there had to be almost recreated from scratch to the correct standard. And John had done a fabulous job in doing the proper research to make sure that that the car was as it might have been. None of us were there to see it when it was brand new, but just about as realistically prepared. And the materials that were used and the finishes that we used were absolutely contemporary for that car. He did a wonderful job. Sadly, we've sold it now, but I know the Japanese collector that has it still keeps it in the same condition. But the problem with a car like that, though, is it's so immaculate and so difficult. We come into the garage queen business. It is difficult to use it in many ways, and that's one of the motivations for saying was that we more or less done everything with it. And whereas our sort of cars, the 60s, 70s, and the modern cars, you can go into Europe and have a nice holiday and tour around with it and practically use it. You're much more constrained with some of those older cars and with what they'll do mechanically.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 weeks after coming back from Europe, where that was taken in the snow, it won Elite at Houghton Tower. So, you can use the car, but again, because it had already been previously fully prepped, it was a case of cleaning it, not going back to square one. That's not to say it wasn't quite a few days' work, but it is achievable and possible to the very highest of standards. So get out there and use your cards.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's my V8, which only recently, I don't know what it was now, it was just pre-pandemic. We drove from London. That was the beginning of the rally with AMOC in North London, and she went all the way to Edinburgh. That's the Caledonian Hotel in Edinburgh, and people were coming off the street to take photographs because so many nice Aston Martins. But the point is that you can use them properly, enjoy them. This is en route to Scotland. That's going over the border into Scotland, and it does no harm at all. You've got to use a bit of common sense. Don't get behind lorries and trucks kicking up gravel. But I mean, if you use a bit of common sense, you can keep your paintwork away from bad things and use the car and enjoy it as they were meant to be. Yeah.
And this is the image of Chris's Rapide, having done all the preparation, the hard work and detailing. This is how it looked at Wormsley. Complete contrast to the very early photographs of it looking a little bit rough around the edges. So that's what you can do. So Concours is open to anybody. If you've got an Aston Martin, it's going to be a nice car in the first place. It's about raising the standard.
Yeah.
And you get a much better car out of it.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that just exemplifies what a fantastic job you can do on a car that looked really very tired, and now it looks immaculate. Yeah. So I don't know if people have got any more particular questions. You can either wave at me or put something in the chat for Christine to look at. But that's
I've got some questions here.
I just say Tom Wood was just waving his hand quickly. So.
Oh, okay. Is Tom there?
Mute myself. I think I'm unmuted now. Thank you. Tom, obviously when you get to Elite, you're judging different cars, or apples and pears, or whatever the saying is. How do you go about doing that? Because obviously it's very difficult to judge a Gaydon car against a pre-war car, for instance.
Yeah, well, that of course is the $64,000 question. It really is a challenge. I think the answer is, over the years, we have tried to develop. I say we, the judges that routinely work together on these things have tried to see how we value different elements. So just being clean is important, but as we said before, an original interior, for an example, or a car that is regularly used versus one that's not, that you've got to sort of feed in these more arbitrary and these things that are not black and white. You see, there is, if you like, a judge's discretion in what is to be preferred. And the last time I came second in Elite, there was a chap who prepared a pre-war car immaculately. And it is very difficult because, and obviously we don't judge our own cars, but I think the judges now, I think we're blessed with plenty of us. So I think there's a more balanced view than probably there might have been when there was just a few people involved. So especially in Elite, and Mark Donoghue, as I was saying earlier, has made it his mission really to continue to tune up the quality of those people at that level. So the answer is it's not easy to do, and there's no precise science, but I think we get a blended level of competence better than we've ever had. Yeah.
I think the point is it shouldn't put people off.
Well, Tom, I was actually judging Elite, so I had a Vanquish, Tom's DB6, and 2 pre-war cars to judge, and you say there could not be more apples and pears, and it was. For the 4 judges, we spent a lot of time weighing up lots and lots and lots of things, and yeah, the winning car was just wonderful.
Yeah. Jim Campbell was there.
Yes.
So, but no, I think the point really is that it shouldn't put people off.
Not at all. No.
No. Yeah, I think there's a sort of we're fair-minded. It's just how you can bring that to be. Got some other. Sorry.
There are some people that have won their class and they don't want to go into Elite because they don't think that they can compete with the other cars. And I think it is another step up. but it's the same process. Just you just have to be a bit more careful how you prepare your car, and maybe spend a little bit more money to get the things fixed that you can't necessarily do yourself, like the bodywork or nuts and bolts and things that are hidden that you can quite easily change in wheel arch liners. I think one of the bigger problems nowadays is these fabricated wheel arches that they're like carpets. How the hell are you supposed to clean them? It's all right cleaning them when you've got a pressure washer, or you can take them out when you've got the wheel off. But if you, as you say, if you drive across the field and you're ending up with grass and cow muck and stuff all over it, you physically can't get them clean on the road.
Yeah, I completely agree. I've been the victim of that. Yeah. Christine, have we got some other questions?
Yes, we have actually. I've been asked to emphasise that AMOC run a Concours d'Etat, which would change from a Concours d'Elegance, which is a subtle difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just comment on that. The Concours d'Etat is all about the state of it's a French word, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's not to do with what looks pretty, because the Concours d'Elegance events, which started with horse-drawn carriages, was about what looked swanky, and that was it. And then people made subjective judgments about that. The intent is to be as objective as we can, and to look at the state of things that they're as they should be, the condition they're in, and of course the cleanliness. So yeah.
Also, this is from Anne. Are you still looking for members, in particular younger members, to join the judging group so that they can learn from the longer established judges?
Yes, definitely, very much so.
Absolutely.
So if they want to drop me or you a line, Christine.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, likewise, I completely endorse that. And because it's a great way for youngsters, we all take it as read, because I'm so old. You've seen most of these models of cars over the years. But I mean, I love the youngsters. It's a great opportunity for them to learn about the history of the cars, and to see, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s cars. It's a history lesson at the same time. Yeah.
Back to just some of the conditions when people are prepping their cars. If your bolts are black and you can't replace them with stainless steel, what do we do then?
Put black ones in.
You have to carefully.
That's why you buy a bag of bolts for sort of 20 quid. And I don't know, every 2 or 3 years, you just replace half a dozen of them. The ones that get the road grime and the curbing and or whatever, that's what I do.
At risk of being even more nerdish, I mean, my background is I'm a chartered engineer and metallurgist. There is nothing in metal that can't be replicated. Metals are, and if it is just corrosion, whatever, it can be cleaned back and then given a proper preparation, the proper paint, it can be made to look as good as new over and over again. That's the fact.
But spending hundreds of pounds on stainless steel bolts on the bottom of your Vanquish, that will actually, they never were fitted by the factory as far as I'm aware, because it was penny pinching. So just fit the original factory spec ones, and on occasion replace them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Another question is 3 new petrol nylon pipes to the Webers on a DB6 better than the factory originals that are less transparent?
You have to ask a factory original person. I was advised that was as appropriate and the best that was. I think Tim Butcher Trinity was my advisor in that matter. But if that's what he's commenting on, is he commenting on the tubes on my DB6 there? I imagine. But anyway, that's the answer to the question. I think I was advised that's probably the closest we can get to the originals. So in fact, some materials, some things, unfortunately, are just not available because the chemistry is now illegal for some of the processes that they used to use for plating things. So there are some areas that can be challenging, shall we say.
And just actually, this is a good one to finish on, actually, from Ian Smith. He did his first judging at Harewood House last year, and he wants to stay involved with this. Are there any judging workshops planned for the near future?
Go on, Mike.
Not at the minute, Christine, but it has crossed my mind. Obviously, there has been a change of management the last few weeks, so I haven't got quite round to that. But I suspect the spring concours will be a bit of a training and learning exercise for all of us, all at once.
Yeah, I think the short answer is no. There's nothing formally planned, but I would like to encourage. How many people we've got? 44 people on the call, which is great. By the way, thank you all for giving us your time. I think the more of you that turn up, the merrier. You know, ideally we'd like everyone to compete, but you don't have to compete. You just come to listen and learn. And if you want to be involved in the judging, great. You know, we've got the whole weekend. We'll do our best to welcome you and get you enjoined in the good habits of Concours. Is there any more questions, Christine?
Yeah. No, I've got no more questions in the chat. So we're 12:01. So that was perfect timing.
How do we do it, eh?
Absolutely perfect. Don't forget, everybody, that this will be, it's been recorded and this will be uploaded onto the AMOC YouTube channel. So it will be there for members overseas to have a look at in their own time. So I don't know about everybody else. I found that amazingly informative. So I'm now thinking about cleaning my little BMW sitting on the drive and just seeing if I can get a little shine on my paintwork. So thank you for doing that. That was really, really helpful. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Hopefully lots of members at the spring concours and some really lovely and well presented cars.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you, Christine, for organising it and so proficiently switching the pictures. And Michael, thanks for your
Pleasure, Tom.
Fantastic background knowledge, which is pretty much unsurpassed. I mean, we're at the top of his game, and everyone else for being here. So yeah, I hope you all have a lovely Sunday.
Thank yous.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Okay.
And we'll see you all at Spring Concours, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yes. Let's just hope the weather gods are on our side too. That's always helpful.